Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. You ever see someone struggling in public and instead of helping, people just roll their eyes or look the other way? Well, that's exactly what was happening in this grocery store until our OP decided to step in. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Elderly woman struggled at checkout, so I did what no one else would. I'm from South Louisiana, and we have a different way of interacting with people that differs even from other southern states. I'm sure people know about southern hospitality, but South Louisiana cranks this up to 11. Ask anyone who's ever been there. We don't care about race, religion, social, or economic status. If you're human, you're owed to be treated with kindness and empathy until you prove otherwise. I left Baton Rouge and moved to Katy, Texas for a teaching gig. It was a Sunday, and I had to run to the Texas-only big grocery chain to get a few things. Sunday was a big shopping day, and the place was packed with long lines waiting to check out. I walked to the closest line with my few groceries in my arms. This was before the prominence of self-checkout, so no matter how much or how little you bought, there was going to be a wait. It's just how things were. No biggie. The lady in front of me had to be in her 80s and not more than 95 pounds. Her buggy was absolutely filled to the top. The people in front of her were almost done checking out when I saw her struggling to pick up a bag of frozen chicken to place on the conveyor. She struggled again with another item and another and another. The cashier started ringing her up and simply stared at her with impatience while this poor old woman struggled with removing items from her buggy. I was like, WTF? I looked around and everyone was sighing with annoyance and impatience. The bagger, the cashier, the people behind me. Seriously? I placed my items down on a nearby drink refrigerator and asked the lady if she needed any help. With a brightness and joy in her eyes, she answered, "Please." I unloaded her buggy onto the conveyor and placed the bagged groceries back in as the bagger handed them to me. I was finished in no time. Smiled at the lady, picked my items back up, and got back in line behind her. She paused for a moment. Evidently, she'd been so flustered with trying to place her groceries on the conveyor, she'd never noticed me behind her. "Wait, you don't work here?" "No, ma'am. Just thought you might appreciate a little help." She then gave me the biggest hug, and with tears in her eyes, she said, Thank you so much." I smiled again and told her, "You're welcome." I followed her out to her vehicle and helped her load everything. She thanked me again and told me she dreaded going to the grocery store because it was so difficult for her and people were always getting frustrated with her when it came to checking out. I shook my head. "That's sad. I'm sorry about that. Back home, stuff like that doesn't happen. If someone needs help, we help them." She started to tear up again, hugged me, and thanked me. I told her to have a nice day and headed back to my truck. Sounds like one of those situations where nobody helps because they look around and nobody else is helping. If any of them were alone in a room with the old lady, there's a much greater chance they'd offer to help. And our second story. Karma in one reply. My childhood bully didn't expect this answer. About 10 years ago, I was living my best life and had moved to Japan to study Japanese, and I was genuinely having a blast and loved every single part of it. One of my old bullies reached out one day on Facebook, and either they'd seen on my page that I lived in Japan or someone had told them, I don't know. They wrote something along the lines of, "Hi OP, it's me, Amy. How are you these days? I noticed you live in Japan now, and I was wondering if you could help me with X, Y, and Z because I'm thinking of moving there myself." Not literally that, but that's the gist. I easily could have answered their questions in about 5 minutes, but hell no. Instead, I replied back, "I'm sorry, Amy who? Do I know you?" And Amy responded with, "Haha, yeah, it's me, Amy from school. We had class together for years." This was when my petty side came out. I just said, "Oh right, Amy, I remember. You used to call me fat and called me the R word a lot. How can I help you?" I got no reply and noticed later that Amy had blocked me. I know it's not a huge thing, but it felt so good to throw those facts in her face because it was 100% accurate. She spent years calling me horrible names, saying I couldn't ride in normal cars because I was too fat and had to be on the back of trucks, and that my clothes were all made out of sheets because I was too fat for normal clothes. And yeah, she called me our translation of the R word every chance she got. I could have been the bigger person and given her the advice she asked for, but F that, find your own effing information. She had a lot of nerve asking if you could help her after she treated you like crap. I'm glad that you reminded her about your past experiences with her. She blocked you out of embarrassment, and it's evident that she's not sorry for being a bully, otherwise she would have offered you an apology instead of acting like you guys were old buddies. What a clown. And our next story. No sitting allowed? Then management can stand too. Way back in the late 1900s, I worked for a large grocery chain that goes by several names depending on what part of the country you're in. We had a cashier who had surgery about 3 weeks earlier, and he had a hard time standing for a long time, so he did the obvious thing and brought in a stool to rest on while he worked. The manager said he couldn't have a stool and would need to get rid of it because the company policy said no sitting while clocked in. Evidently, not even on breaks. The cashier tried and failed to finish his shift and ended up leaving early. He did this a couple of times and was eventually fired for poor work performance. Now, I worked as a night crew stalker, which means I unload the truck, load up the go-backs, and stock the aisles. I also took out all the trash for the admin offices. While I was cleaning the offices, I removed every chair I could find and loaded them into the go-backs truck. I also printed out a letter in bold wording to the effect of, "All employees are reminded they are not to sit while clocked in." No one knew it was me because we were always short-staffed and I usually loaded the go-backs truck by myself. The next night, the manager came in and exploded at the disrespect and yada yada yada. He ordered a new chair, but it didn't arrive for a couple of days, and no new chairs came to replace the others, just his. So I shipped it back again. This time they caught me the next day, but his chair was already gone. I was fired and they were threatening me with petty theft and whatnot, but since I just shipped the chairs to the warehouse, they didn't really have a leg to stand on. One of my friends said that the chairs were all returned a couple of nights later and everything went back to normal. Aw man, now that I write this out, there wasn't a happy ending. You didn't change the world or get your coworker's job back, but what you did was still a very human and beautiful thing. I know it said 90s, but this seems like a lawsuit in the making. It'd be a reasonable accommodation based on the situation, and if he was able to continue to do his work while sitting. And our last story. Trespassers broke into my backyard pool, then tried to blame me. When I was 30, I bought my first house, a 4-bedroom, 2-bath with a fenced-in backyard and an in-ground pool. I was so proud. I worked long hours at a factory, often 12-hour shifts, saving up for over 7 years so I could have my forever home. The neighborhood was great, friendly, welcoming, and everyone looked out for each other. After about a year, I'd gotten to know the families within a couple of blocks. One day, my neighbor came over to chat and asked if her kids could use the pool occasionally. I was fine with that. I was just happy she asked and was polite about it. Plus, I'd gotten to know her kids who were polite and often helped with yard work. I agreed they could use the pool when I was at work, as I worked from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. with rotating day and night shifts. I asked that they avoid the pool on the days I worked nights since I'd be sleeping. I also asked that they clean up after themselves and let me know ahead of time when they'd be using it. Things went well for a while, but then a couple of other families asked if their kids could use it too. I was hesitant to let too many kids in my backyard, but eventually we had a meeting with 9 families and 12 kids. There's no public pool in the area, so I decided to let them use mine, but with a few rules. No one was allowed in the house. My house has lots of glass, and I didn't want to risk anything getting damaged. Kids must be supervised by an adult at all times. They had to inform me beforehand when they wanted to use the pool. No bringing anyone else, no extra family members or friends. They had to clean up after themselves. Everyone agreed and things went smoothly for the first month. As the weather got colder, I told everyone I'd be putting the pool away. To my surprise, a few of the families came over to help me clean the backyard and prepare the pool for winter. We had a great barbecue and I appreciated the help. Fast forward 17 years and this arrangement is still going strong. Every year the families help me set up the pool in spring and put it away in the winter, and we have a big barbecue each time. It's wonderful. However, there have been a couple of issues. One of the most memorable incidents happened 6 years ago when I was getting ready for a 4-day vacation. I told everyone the pool would be closed while I was away. The morning I was supposed to leave, my flight got delayed, and I went back home to rest. As I got inside, I noticed a strange noise and splashing coming from the backyard. It was after 11 p.m. I went out to investigate and found a couple in my pool having fun. They got angry when I interrupted them, demanding to know why I was there and when I was supposed to be gone for 4 days. I didn't know who they were, and it turned out they'd heard I was leaving and decided to take advantage of the situation. They jumped my locked fence to get into the pool. I called the police, and when they arrived, the couple was still in the pool. They argued with the officers, even accusing me of being a perv for interrupting them. They were arrested for trespassing, and I made sure they could no longer come onto my property. They were friends with one of the families I'd allowed to use the pool, and it was a huge mess, but I felt better knowing I'd stood my ground. The second major issue happened this past summer, 17 years later. I told everyone the pool would be closed because I was bringing my family to visit for the week. My neighbors, who also have kids, were aware that the pool would be off limits while I was away. I went to the airport, picked up my family, and was driving home when I noticed several cop cars outside my house. I panicked, thinking something had happened. When I arrived, I heard shouting and an officer came up to me. They said they'd received a call from a neighbor reporting a break-in. When I went into my backyard, I saw a woman in a bikini with blood dripping from her arm and one of her kids with blood on their foot. She immediately blamed me, saying, "This is all your fault." Confused, I asked what had happened. It turns out the woman had recently moved to the neighborhood and heard that anyone could use my pool. She jumped my fence with her kids to swim. When her youngest child needed to use the bathroom, she tried to break into my house by smashing a window. In the process, her son knocked over a vase, stepped on the broken glass, and cut his foot. She then started rummaging through my house, trying to find something to treat the wound. My neighbors had seen the commotion and called the police. The woman was screaming, demanding I be arrested for keeping my doors locked while allowing people to use my pool. The officers took her aside and confirmed that I hadn't given her permission to be in my backyard or break into my house. I pressed charges for damages, and after going to small claims court, she was forced to pay for everything. She ended up moving away after a few months because no one in the neighborhood wanted to associate with her. I decided I'd had enough and banned everyone from using the pool. I also installed a cover with a lock and installed several cameras. The whole experience was a huge headache, but in the end, I was able to move on. It was a reminder that you can't always control how others act, but you can control how you respond. Wow, 17 years of being an absolute saint to your neighbors, and yet it only takes a couple of entitled idiots to ruin a good thing. This is why we can't have nice things. Seems like the only right option was to not allow the pool to be used from day one. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.